Hey everyone, Will Brink here, brinkzone.com. Topic today that it's a big topic. I'm going to try to cover it in a way that is easy for people to sort of absorb. But it's a really basic topic that I was on X, Twitter, and there was sort of an ongoing thread between a number of doctors, medical professional types and other people. And the topic of nutrition came up, as it often does. And one of the docs mentioned, even as a doctor, nutrition experts that they talk to and stuff often have different opinions on nutrition, which is, even confusing, of course, even to them, understandably so. And the question came up, or the question that sort of hit me, which was, well, why are opinions so divided and all over the place when it comes to nutrition? And this is actually a really interesting question, considering how much confusion there is and how much debate there is and all that. Now, I'm going to try to answer this, which is, like I say, it's actually a really big question. It's not that easy to answer. But one of I would say, the major reason that opinions are so divided is that a lot of the research we don't have the amount and type of research that we should and we could to really answer, some of these major questions about, which nutrition, which direction in nutrition, which diet, which macronutrient. Obviously, unless you're living under a stone, you of course are aware of the ongoing debate on things like keto versus carnivore versus regular eating, omnivore versus vegan, seed oil controversy, and on and on and on it goes. And of course, the obvious question is, why don't we have the type of information that we need research-wise to conclusively answer these questions, which is a good question. That's a big one. And I'm going to try to answer this as best I can. So, what the reason that we actually lack the amount and type of research that we really need to answer those questions, which you would think, basically we all eat, we all sleep, we all do a certain number of things. Nutrition being the one thing we all do, or die. You would think that there would be a lot of really good, you would think there'd be a lot of research out there that would answer those questions. And I'm here to tell you, there is not. And I'll explain why. So first, let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit here. The majority of the type of research that we have in nutrition, I don't know what the percent is. And actually, this would make a really good meta-analysis for somebody who ever wanted to look at what is the amount of the types of research that we have, and I'll explain that too. But anyway, the majority of the research that we have, that we use in nutrition, is epidemiological, population-based. What is that, if anybody doesn't know? Basically, you look at large groups of people. You may go forward in time, prospectively. You may look backward in time, retrospectively. That is, let's say going forward in time, you pick 100 people and you follow them, what they eat for a certain amount of time, a year, 5 years, whatever. You have them fill out questionnaires. They may meet with a nutritionist or a physiologist or whatever on a regular basis and all that. Now, that type of research, I think that's the majority of the research that's used. I don't know, is it 80%, 90%, 95%? I don't know, but, and I'll explain why that is in a second too. But the majority of the research we use, that we go on, is this type of epi research. Now, anybody that's taken epidemiology, or, stats or whatever, if there's one thing that gets drilled into your head, or it should, is that correlation does not equal causation, no matter what. Okay, full stop. And that type of research, of course, for obvious reasons, has a lot of limitations. Now, it's not useless. Again, people argue about things. But again, researchers whether they're medical professionals, whether they're scientists, whatever they are, find patterns in this research all the time to go look further, to go look and do a, let's say, a much more refined study. Now, you may find a pattern. I'm just trying to think of people that eat a lot of refined sugars tend to be have a higher rate of diabetes, right? That's a pretty consistent finding. I don't think anybody's going to be real surprised by this one. Okay, but so what they would then do, let's say 50 years ago, someone figured this out. All right, so future studies would then, again, you can't really make absolute cause and effect from this. You have an obvious association. You would look at how strong the association. There's a lot of machinations going on in the background here. But again, you really cannot and should not make cause and effect conclusions from it. So studies going forward, what they would then do is they would try to control as many of the variables as they can to, account for or discount the variables. Okay. So let's say the next study they did with 100 people, they tried to account or control for body mass, the amount of exercise they got, other things they ate, and so on and so forth. That is to try to see the strength of this association. Again, that makes them a lot better. And so you are narrowing for sure, of course, the causation, what you're looking for, by accounting for, controlling for these variables and so forth. These make the studies better. Again, the size of the study matters. Again, retrospective, where you're going forward or backward in time, all of this stuff definitely helps to refine down, the likelihood of causation of what you're looking at. But again, even you still cannot absolutely go with cause and effect. And so that is the majority of the research that, and again, there's a lot of other things you could talk about. For example, a lot of these studies, again, especially if you got thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, some of these studies are really big. What they give them are questionnaires to fill out. Now, most people, really they're not going to be very accurate what they ate last week, So again, and the questionnaire thing, again, can be, the questionnaire thing can be stronger or weaker depending on, obviously, sometimes they have them, like say they might be meeting with a nutritionist or something regularly to go over them. You can strengthen the quality and the strength of the use of the questionnaire can vary by the study. You got to look at it. This is why you got to read the study. Okay, that's another topic for another day. But be that as it may, questionnaires are notoriously poor way of getting accurate information from people. Everybody who does any research at all knows this. So that is the majority of the research, basically, like say, that this epidemiological population-based data, which, again, there's definitely trends. I mean, they see consistent trends in this data. But again, cause and effect cannot really be determined. Depending on, obviously, the population you're looking at, it can, there's definitely trend in the data, but it can still be all over the place. Now, if you're prone to, let's say, cherry picking, you have a particular approach to your diet or your nutrition or whatever that you prefer, which of course now you have confirmation bias. You want to find data that supports your position. And so you want to cherry pick. Well, you can almost always find, again, some epi study, some population study to support your bias. Now, what we then talk about there is, basically the bulk of the data. That is, what does most of the data say most of the time? This is where things like meta-analysis and stuff, come into play, which, again, another topic. The thing about meta-analysis is that they're only as good as your inclusion and exclusion criteria. That is, what studies do you choose to put in this meta, right? Or leave out? That's the big one. Anyway. But again, the bulk of the data that we go on, that scientists use, medical doctors, whole policies are made nationwide, decisions are made as to what we recommend for nutrition and medications and excuse me, and so forth, are these large epidemiological population-based studies. Okay, so the next question, I no doubt, if you're listening to this, you've made it 10 minutes in, you're still listening, was, well, why don't we have studies where we are, controlling? Why aren't we having good, really specific controlled feeding studies where we're not just asking them questionnaires. We're not looking at what they eat and trying to make, and that's the big question. That's a really important question. Because we really don't. You'd be surprised if you're not a researcher type and you haven't been doing this for a long time. You're probably would be pretty surprised how small a percent is the high quality feeding, what they would controlled feeding studies. What we would call direct intervention studies, where everything is actually controlled. You take a group of people. You control exactly, you feed them specific, foods and follow everything and all that. Now, think about that. Even if you don't do this type of thing, I think you're going to start to see what we're talking about. When people say, it's like herding cats. No. Working with cats is a whole lot easier and less expensive than working with human beings. Now, think about this. If you're going to take, now, a little side bend is that you're going to need enough people, right? You're going to need enough people. If you're going to do a study like that, you need at least enough people to reach some sort of statistical significance. Otherwise, the criticism of the study, and it's a valid criticism, is always going to be, well, you really didn't have enough people in the study to get good statistics out of it. So you're going to need a lot of people. All right. So making up a number, you take 100 people. You put them in a dorm somewhere. Now, where's the dorm going to come from? 100 people and putting them in a dorm. You know what that's going to cost? Okay, you take 100 people because you need enough people, group size, in this study to get statistical significance. To get good stats. Okay, you're going to now feed them 100 people who don't like being cooped up. They're not allowed to leave. You're going to feed them all their meals. You're going to restrict or follow everything they do for exercise. You're going to control all the variables so you can really narrow down cause and effect. Think about the cost of that. Now you're going to have to run this out. How long is this study going to go on? It can't go on for a week, right? Yeah. Is it a month? Is it a year? So if you start thinking about this, and you don't have to be and have any background for research to start to realize how difficult and expensive that is. A lot of the controlled feeding studies that we have, where they're trying to answer a question, sort of on you just can't control everything when it comes to human beings, and so that where they start to fall apart mostly is in the criticism of people that will look at the study and say, well, they didn't control for the type of protein they ate. They didn't control for the carbs they ate. They didn't control, for their movement. It goes on and on and on. And so if you think about it, the reason we really don't have the answers to the nutritional questions, and why there's so much controversy and different opinions on nutrition is because the cost and the difficulties of doing really well-controlled studies in human beings is so prohibitive that we don't have it. And now think about the next thing. Who's going to pay for it, right? To come up with the cost of, again, let's go back to our 100 people, put in a dorm, follow everything they eat, everything they do to get hard, accurate, good statistics, cause and effect. Somebody's got to pay for it. Now, is a pharmaceutical company going to pay for it? No. You know why they're not going to pay for it. Is a supplement company going to pay for it? No. Who's going to pay for it? And we're not talking small money here. This is, hugely expensive and difficult. I mean, there's a difficulty level in doing this. I mean, how many people do you have to hire that are in this dorm that are, working the kitchen, serving the meals, making sure they ate everything? It goes on and on. Okay, so who is going to pay for this? Well, do you know the answer to this? So, who should pay for it? Well, I think the NIH, the CDC, this to me, would actually seem like money well spent to get, really do some of these studies and get answers. I think it's in the public good. Of course they do, publish and conduct again a lot of these epi studies, and or fund some of the epi studies and all that. But I mean, they can only get you so far. So large epidemiological studies, even if they're really well controlled, or at least when they've done a really good job of accounting for and controlling what they call the confounders, can only get you so far. But who should pay for it? I mean, I have to say, as far as my tax money, I think getting answers to some of these questions where you take groups of people and you really control everything, and you have to pay, and you got to pay the people. Let's add another cost. You got to pay these people to do it. Are you going to sit in some highly controlled environment, whatever it may be, for months or 6 months or a year? No, you're going to want to get paid for that. I would. You're going to get me to sit there and eat. I mean, they might be feeding me something I don't like, right? Let's say they're going to feed me 3 meals a day of food I don't like. That's not going to make me happy. You're going to pay me. You have to pay me some pretty serious money to do that. So again, you may get, let's say, a lot of times college students are an obvious group of study participants. Okay, so you work at nutrition department or something like that at a major university. You put out the word to college students that are always looking for extra credits. You're going to get credit for it. They can write papers from they get a benefit from it. But again, you can do that, and it's I know people that do that all the time, and it's a successful model to get. But again, these kids they do have to go to class, and they got things to do. And again, how much of a controlled environment can you develop where you can account for everything, and you can say conclusively to the research community that's going to read this paper that you were able to account for everything, that the criticisms, people can't criticize the paper because it's so well done. Those are very rare papers. And if they exist, or when they exist, again, usually the Achilles heel is just that they're just small. I mean, again, it's to do 10 or 20 people or something in that manner. There is something called a metabolic ward where they, you want to talk about restrictive, metabolic ward studies are usually, again, fairly small just because of you're talking, the cost, basically. The difficulty and the cost of putting people in a metabolic ward to literally, you can actually track their metabolic rate and so forth very accurately, but it's very expensive and it's difficult. But so college students are a sort of an obvious one, but again, now you have a pretty limited, population, right? You have basically young, more or less healthy kids, to look at, which, again, better than nothing, but does it represent? Is it a representation of the culture that you're in or whatever? No. So I'm just touching. I'm really just scratching the surface of how difficult it is to do the type of studies that we could put an end to these conflicting opinions, some of which comes from some pretty qualified people, to finally once and for all answer these questions that we all have, that you have. But again, I understand consistently. Again, having been in this business for a long time now, people that throw up their hands and go, Jesus, I hear one thing and then they change their mind, or this one guy who's got all these credentials said this one thing, and the other lady with all the credentials said a completely opposite thing, and I'm confused and I just can't deal. I can't blame you. Even myself and people like myself can get to that point where, again, you sort of have to again pull back, and what you tend to do is look at, again, what they call the bulk of the data. What does most of the data say most of the time about a thing, right? That can help a lot. That takes a little bit of legwork, and sort of you got to go dig a little bit because you're going to get led around by your nose. And again, you always have to be, especially in today's world, you have to be suspicious of the motivations, again, of the people and the group and all that is recommending a thing. But I can tell you, it gets It's a full-time job. That I'll tell you that. It is a full-time job keeping up with the data out there that seemingly, again, if you're not in it and you're kind of on the outside, seemingly bounces around and changes all the time. It's not, doesn't actually do that. I know it seems that way, but that's more headlines. That's mostly people trying to get, clickbait headlines to get you to read stuff. That's health, health types that have a book to sell or a program to sell. So quote unquote influencers that again want to make a name for themselves that may or may not even know that they are, espousing nonsense. Some of them know better, but they know what they're doing, and some of them don't. Some of them really just don't know. Again, as I earlier on this video, we talked about cherry picking and bias and stuff, and there's a whole lot of that out there. So, hopefully I've answered, I think, a fairly important question people may ask. Well, why don't we have the science, as nearly as much science as you would think that we would have or should have, where we have really can answer definitively certain nutritional questions that seem to be fairly controversial and bounced around right now. Of course, well, not right now, but again, it comes and goes. There's, obviously the whole keto carnivore effects on. There's a lot of debate going on right now. Sort of a study that came out. I won't even get into it, but I have posted a little bit on my Facebook page stuff. But a study that came out that looked at keto and its effects on LDL and ApoB, and whether the effects that they found, which as expected, the LDL went way up, and then of course the debate as to was it associated or with progression of plaque and so forth. Big debate going on there. Bottom line on that one, if you just want the quick, is that the study was not powered nor designed to actually really answer those questions. But that's a really heated debate going on. And I would think, again, if you're not in research and you're not scientists following this, you're looking at this and going, how are they still debating this? Wait a second, I thought this was settled. How do they not know the answer to this? Well, partially this is why we don't know the answers. Let's think of, I'm going to develop a study for you right here. If you don't understand, if from watching this you're still a little confused, okay, we want to know absolutely conclusively if LDL cholesterol or ApoB. ApoB is the more accurate predictor of heart disease over LDL. That's a different topic. But anyway, we want to know the absolute answer to this. Okay, you would have to know the answer to this, not using it, again, not looking at epidemiological studies, what people ate over time that's associated with heart disease. We're going to take a group of people, and we're going to feed them X, and we're going to see, did heart disease progress? Well, heart disease takes 20, 30 years. The heart attack you have at 50 started when you were in your 20s or 30s, right? Heart disease is a very slow process. Okay. You know where this is going. You're going to take 100 people. You're going to control everything they eat, and you're going to follow them for 3 decades to see which one of those people, has blocked arteries, has calcified plaque or non-calcified plaque, and on it goes. Can you imagine the cost of this? No one's going to do it. It could not be. You would have to be the GDP of the U.S. to get a study like that done to answer that question 100% conclusively. To answer the question, and it doesn't exist. Now, again, a pharmaceutical company, now if they have a drug, let's say a statin, but there's a whole bunch of now non-statin lipid-lowering drugs, by the way, if one doesn't want to take a statin. Anyway, now they will spend $100 million, a few $100 million to at least get a group of people, give one of them the drug, the other one is a placebo, what have you, and follow them for 5 years without mostly controlling what they eat and all that. Again, that is the type of money you're talking about to at least get a drug to market, because especially in the U.S., getting a drug to market is horrendously expensive. Another topic. All right, we're at 25 minutes, so I'm going to get off. I hope this helps answer the question. If you have comments, questions, leave them below. Like this video, help a bro out. And of course, this is brought to you by Alpha Joe, coffee booster, and the latest one is the advanced protein. which is, well, obviously I'm biased because I think it's the best stuff out there. There's nothing like it. And I'll see you all on the Brink Zone.